It was the kind of night that swallowed sound and light, a winter storm so fierce it could freeze your soul. Most people would have stayed home, safe and warm, but Averie Solange didn't. At 24, she had faced enough of the world's cruelty to know fear, but that night, she faced something far worse. A man clinging to life on a bridge, alone, bleeding, and unconscious as the icy wind tore at him. She had no time to think, no one to help. Only the choice to act, and the storm pressing in from every side. What she didn't know was that saving him would change everything. What she didn't know was that the life she rescued belonged to a man whose secrets could shake the town to its core. And what she certainly didn't know was that by the time the night ended, nothing would ever be the same. Not her life, not the town, not anyone who crossed her path. This is the story of courage, betrayal, and a gift that no one expected. A story of a young woman whose heart refused to stay silent, even when the world tried to bury her. Before we dive in, I'd love to know where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. It's amazing to think that while Averie was braving a freezing storm miles away, people like you are watching this story unfold from all over the country. I read every comment, and your story matters too. Averie Solange, 24 years old and exhausted from another long shift at the clinic, drove slowly through the Maryland backroads as the winter storm thickened around her. Snow slapped against her windshield like cold, angry hands. The world outside looked blurred, distant, almost erased, just the way Averie sometimes felt in a town where people stared too long at the color of her skin. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, fighting both the storm and the memories of a lifetime of whispered insults and fake smiles that followed her everywhere. She had taken this old route only because the main road was blocked by a fallen tree. The bridge ahead was narrow and lonely, the kind of place people only crossed when they had no other choice. As her headlights cut through the white haze, something flickered, orange and weak, like a dying heartbeat. Hazard lights. She slowed, breath catching as the shape of a crushed SUV formed on the icy bridge, its front half bent into the guardrail. Averie stepped out into the stabbing wind. The cold clung to her, stealing her breath as she approached the ruined vehicle. Through the shattered window she saw him, an older white man, gray hair matted with blood, slumped over the wheel. His lips were blue. His chest rose only faintly. "Sir," Averie whispered, pulling the door until the frozen metal groaned open. The man didn't move. She reached for his pulse, her heart racing when she felt it. Weak, but real. Then the bridge beneath her feet let out a deep, eerie crack. The groan of the bridge deepened into a tremor, shaking the rail as if the whole structure were exhaling its last breath. Averie didn't hesitate. She hooked her arms under the old man's and pulled with every ounce of strength left in her tired body. His weight dragged against the ice, slowing her, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Behind them, another crack split through the night like a warning shot. She stumbled, but didn't stop until she reached her car, shoving the passenger door open and guiding him inside. Her hands trembled as she blasted the heat and sped off the bridge. Snow spiraled in wild circles, swallowing the road. For a moment, all she could hear was her own breath, shaky, disbelieving, terrified. She glanced at the man beside her. His head leaned against the window, eyes closed, skin ghost pale. She checked his pulse again. Still there. Still fragile. "You're not dying tonight," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she believed it or if she was begging. As she wiped blood from his temple, something caught her eye. A watch, heavy, gold, unmistakably expensive, wrapped around his wrist. The kind of watch Averie had only ever seen in magazine ads and store windows she never entered. She frowned. Who was he? And what was someone like him doing on a forgotten bridge in the middle of a storm? Before she could think more, bright headlights exploded through the snowfall ahead. A massive truck barreled toward her, swerving wildly on the ice, straight into her lane. Averie yanked the wheel hard to the right. Her tires screamed across the ice. Skidding so close to the guardrail, she felt the scrape vibrate through the car. The truck thundered past, missing her by inches. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The world went silent except for her pounding heart and the storm raging outside. She steadied the car and pushed forward, refusing to let fear slow her down. By the time she reached the small clinic, her fingers were numb and her nerves were frayed. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher, and Averie helped lift the unconscious man onto it. Inside the warm fluorescent hallway, she finally felt her muscles unclench. She stood beside him as the staff checked his vitals. His eyes fluttered open for a second, unfocused and glassy. "The place outside town," he whispered. "Don't let them find me." Averie froze, unsure if he was dreaming or warning her. Once he drifted back into unconsciousness, she stepped out of the room, rubbing her arms to shake off the unease curling in her stomach. She kept replaying his words, wondering what secret place could scare a man who wore a watch worth more than her car. Everything felt wrong, like she had stepped into someone else's story. As she walked down the hallway toward the reception desk, the lights flickered. A cold draft slid across her neck. She lifted her head, and that's when she saw him, a tall figure in a black coat, standing perfectly still at the end of the corridor, watching her. Averie blinked, and the man in the black coat vanished, as if the storm outside had swallowed him whole. A chill crept up her spine. She hurried back into the patient room, but the old man was still unconscious, surrounded by nurses, monitors humming softly. No intruders, no shadows, no reason for her heart to be pounding. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that whoever he was, he hadn't come to check on the patient. He had come to look at her. Hours later, after giving her statement and confirming the man was stable, Averie finally drove home through thinning snow. Her roommates, Laurel and Jen, sat on the couch scrolling through their phones. "You're late," Laurel muttered. "Again?" Jen raised an eyebrow. "Forgot we live with a superhero." Their voices carried that familiar tone, half joke, half jab, that Averie had learned to swallow. She brushed past them, reminding herself that not every battle needed fighting. Not tonight. In her tiny room, Averie changed into warm clothes and sat on the edge of her bed. The image of the black-coated stranger hovered in her mind. She tried to tell herself it was just the stress, the storm, the near accident, the fading adrenaline. But deep down, she felt it. Eyes still on her, somewhere. That night, long after the apartment had gone quiet, Averie lay awake listening to the wind. A sudden loud crack jolted her upright. Before she could move, the window beside her shattered inward, glass exploding across the room like icy shards of danger. Averie is already facing so much: storms, threats, and a stranger watching her every move. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you're watching this from somewhere snowy or stormy, give a shout out to where you are. Shards of glass glittered across Averie's floor like frozen raindrops. She stumbled back, heart hammering, searching the darkness outside for any movement. Her roommates screamed from down the hall, and within minutes police cars lit the apartment complex with flashing blue and red. Officers swept through the snowy courtyard, their boots sinking into untouched drifts. But they found nothing. No footprints, no thrown object, no sign of anyone hiding nearby. One officer shrugged, suggesting the storm had blown something into the window. Averie didn't believe it. Storms didn't watch people from clinic hallways. The next morning, she dragged herself back to work running on fear and barely an hour of sleep. As she walked into the clinic lobby, a man in a gray suit stepped forward. He was middle-aged, gentle-eyed, holding a small sealed envelope. "You must be Averie Solange," he said softly. "I'm Martin Hale, Mr. Hartwell's assistant." He handed her the envelope with both hands, as if it were fragile. "He wanted you to have this." He managed to write it before he was sedated again. Averie opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for saving my life. You have no idea what you've protected me from." Folded inside the paper was a strange metal key, heavy, old, engraved with numbers she didn't recognize. A chill swept through her. Martin's expression tightened, watching her reaction, but he said nothing more before hurrying out. Averie tucked the key into her pocket, unsure if it was gratitude or warning. Her phone rang. Her little brother's voice burst through in a terrified scream. "Averie, someone's outside the house." Averie didn't even grab her coat. She bolted out of the clinic, keys shaking in her hand as she tore across town through the thinning storm. Her brother's cries echoed in her head, pushing her foot harder onto the gas. Snow flew in spirals behind her as she sped into her childhood neighborhood. When she pulled up, her brother, Isaiah, burst out of the front door, tears streaming down his cheeks. He was out there, he choked, just standing, Averie pulled him close, holding him until his shaking eased. Her mom stepped out next, wrapped in a thick robe, her expression tight but steady. Together they walked around the yard, flashlights sweeping across the snow. And there they saw them, footprints. Deep, deliberate prints that circled the entire house as if someone had been studying it, memorizing every window, every door. Averie's stomach twisted. This wasn't a random scare. Whoever it was had come with purpose. Inside, the warmth of her mother's living room wrapped around her, and for a moment Averie felt like a child again, safe, protected. Her mom, Marlene, rubbed her back as she explained the envelope and the strange metal key. When she handed it over, Marlene's eyes widened. This looks like the old mill keys. The ones they used before it shut down. That place has been locked for years. Her voice dropped. Why would he give this to you? Averie shook her head, unable to answer. Then, from her coat pocket, the key emitted a soft, mechanical beep. Once, then again, faster. The beeping from the key grew faster, sharper, as if urging her somewhere. Averie knew exactly where it wanted her to go. Despite her mother's protests, she drove straight to the abandoned steel mill on the edge of town, a massive rusted skeleton of twisted beams and broken windows. It had been shut down years before she was even born, after stories of accidents, corruption, and something darker that nobody talked about anymore. Tonight, it loomed like a sleeping giant, half buried in snow. Averie stepped inside through a warped side door. The air was thick with dust and cold metal, the kind of cold that sank straight into her bones. Her flashlight swept across old machinery, frozen in time. But then her beam caught something that shouldn't have been there. Fresh footprints in the dust. Not old, not faded. Fresh, leading deeper into the mill. Her breath shortened as she followed them through the maze of equipment until they stopped at a huge steel grate in the floor. Beneath it, hidden under shadow, was an old industrial elevator. The key in her pocket pulsed again, as if confirming she was exactly where she was meant to be. Averie swallowed hard and inserted the key into a rusted panel. Against all logic, the mechanism clicked to life. The elevator shuddered, doors sliding open with a long metallic groan. She stepped inside, heart pounding, gripping the rail as the elevator descended into darkness. The air grew colder, heavier, like something ancient was waiting below. Then, halfway down, a piercing screech ripped through the shaft, and the cables snapped. The elevator dropped like a stone. Averie screamed, bracing herself against the railing as metal shrieked around her. The fall lasted only seconds, but it felt endless, until the elevator slammed into something soft beneath it, a stack of old storage pallets that broke the impact just enough to keep her alive. Pain shot through her legs as she crawled out, coughing through the dust swirling in the dim underground corridor. A faint light glowed at the end of the hallway. Limping, Averie followed it until she reached a heavy steel door, one that definitely hadn't been built for the public. It stood slightly open. She pushed it wider and stepped inside. There, sitting upright on a cot, was the old man she had saved from the bridge. His eyes widened when he saw her. You made it," he whispered, voice thin but steadier than before. "I'm Silas Hartwell." The name hit her like a jolt. Hartwell, the billionaire recluse whose money built half the town, but who was rarely seen by anyone. She had treated his workers, heard rumors, seen the name on plaques, but never imagined he was the man she dragged from the snow. "Why are you here?" Averie asked, breath uneven. Silas looked around the concrete room, lined with old food supplies, cots, and rusted filing cabinets. "This was a shelter," he said softly. "Built during the worst racial tensions decades ago. People like you weren't safe then. Some aren't now. I come here once a year, to remember. To keep certain secrets hidden." Averie's skin prickled. Secrets from who? Before he could answer, a violent gunshot exploded from somewhere above, echoing through the concrete floor like a warning sent straight for them. The echo of the gunshot ricocheted off the walls, making Averie jump. Dust fell from the ceiling, and every instinct screamed at her to run. Before panic could take over, heavy boots thundered down the stairs. Silas's security team burst through the shadows, guns drawn, scanning the corridors. "Get her out now," one shouted. Averie didn't argue. Together, they bolted back into the elevator shaft's broken opening, climbing through the rubble until fresh air hit their faces. Outside, the night was calm again, the storm having softened to a whisper of snow. Averie's lungs heaved, but she noticed something unsettling: fresh footprints in the white, circling them from behind. Someone had followed her from the mill, silent and careful. Her heart sank at the thought that she was never truly alone in this town. Not now, not ever. Silas, leaning on a security officer, finally spoke. "Averie, there's something you should know." His voice trembled, but carried weight. "I'm dying. It's only a matter of time. But before that, I want to do right by people I ignored for far too long. You saved my life, and now I can maybe fix some of the wrongs." Averie listened, the wind whipping at her hair, mixing fear with awe. But before she could ask another question, he gasped, clutching his chest. His knees buckled. Averie lunged forward, panic flooding her veins. Silas collapsed in her arms, struggling to breathe, the world tilting around her. Averie held Silas in the snow, pressing her hands against his chest, whispering over and over that he had to hold on. But even as the paramedics arrived, rushed him into the ambulance, and drove away into the swirling storm, she knew. She knew in the pit of her stomach that it was too late. Hours later, the hospital called. Silas Hartwell, billionaire recluse and secret philanthropist, had passed away quietly, leaving the town stunned and grieving. The next morning, the story spread like wildfire. Newspapers, social media, even the local news ran the headline: "Young nurse saves billionaire, then he dies." Averie's phone rang nonstop. Messages of praise, of awe, of people calling her a hero. Yet, beneath the admiration, there were whispers of doubt. Some questioned her motives. Why would a young nurse get involved? They asked online. It smells like a stunt for money. Averie felt the sting of betrayal in a town she had only ever tried to serve. Even in heroism, she could not escape the prejudice that had shadowed her life. She tried to retreat, to find comfort in her small apartment. The quiet felt fragile, temporary, like a paper wall against a storm. Then came the smell, faint at first, then unmistakable. Smoke. She spun toward the window just in time to see bright orange flames licking the side of her building. Her heart froze. Panic clawed at her chest. Before she could react, the fire alarm blared, and her stomach dropped as she realized someone had set fire to her apartment. Silas is gone, the town is shaken, and Averie's bravery has changed everything. But the danger isn't over. How would you feel if you were in her place, standing up against people who try to silence you? Comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Your voice matters, just like Averie's, and it's amazing to feel this story connect us across the country. Flames roared like a living thing, devouring Averie's apartment. Firefighters arrived within minutes, their hoses spraying torrents of water, sirens cutting through the chaos. Smoke stung her eyes, and she coughed, her lungs burning as she watched the place she called home crumble. The fire chief shook his head grimly. Suspicious, definitely not an accident. Averie's stomach knotted. Someone wanted her scared, silenced, maybe even hurt. But why? She had only ever tried to do the right thing. With her apartment reduced to charred memories, Averie moved in with her mother, Marlene. The familiarity of her childhood home felt like both a comfort and a cage. Nights were quiet now, but her mind never stopped racing, piecing together Silas's secrets, the black coat figure, and the strange key that had led her to the mill. She couldn't shake the sense that danger was waiting around every corner, biding its time. One evening, while cleaning out an old cabinet, she discovered a faded photograph tucked behind a stack of ledgers. It showed Silas, smiling, surrounded by a group of influential local families, men in sharp suits, women in tailored coats, their expressions formal, almost calculating. Averie's eyes traced the faces carefully, noting the subtle arrogance in their postures, the way they claimed power without words. Then her blood ran cold. One of the men, the black coat stranger from the clinic, the figure who had been following her, watching her every move. Averie's hands shook. Whoever he wasn't just observing. He was connected. And now, he knew she had found him. Averie couldn't sleep. The photo of Silas and the black coat stranger haunted her. She spent the next day in the library and online, piecing together fragments of Silas's life. Newspaper clippings, old town records, and buried articles revealed a man who had quietly fought injustice for decades, donating to clinics, helping black families purchase homes, funding scholarships, but never seeking recognition. Yet, the deeper she dug, the clearer it became that certain powerful families in town had fought back, keeping his contributions hidden, ensuring he remained invisible to the public eye. The same families now seemed connected to the man who had been following her. At night, Averie sat with her mother and brother, sharing what she had uncovered. Marlene held Isaiah close while Averie's voice shook but refused to falter. She wanted them to know that Silas's life had meaning, that courage sometimes went unseen, and that they too could choose to fight, even in small ways. For a moment, warmth filled the room, pushing the fear away. Averie clung to it, feeling strength in the bond they shared, the shared history of standing against the shadows. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving the world cold and bright. Averie stepped outside to check the mailbox and froze. There, pinned to the snow-covered porch, was a dead crow. Its black feathers glistened in the sun, and tied to its leg was a small note. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. In jagged, deliberate handwriting were 2 words. "Stop digging." Averie's hands shook as she handed the note to the local police officer. "Someone left this at my house, threatening me," she said, her voice firm despite the fear coiling in her chest. The officer glanced at the crow, then at her, and sighed. "Averie, it's probably a prank. Nothing here indicates a real threat. Just keep an eye out." His dismissal hit her like a slap. Fear gnawed at her stomach, but she refused to let it take her. If the police wouldn't protect her, she had to protect herself. Back at her mother's house, she found Isaiah sitting on the floor, trembling as he clutched his blanket. "I'm scared," he whispered. Averie knelt beside him, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "I know, baby," she murmured, her voice soft but determined. "But I promise, I'll keep you safe. No one's going to hurt us. Not while I'm here." She held him close, drawing strength from the warmth of his small frame. Courage bubbled in her chest. Fear was only a shadow she could push past if she moved carefully, quickly. Later that night, Averie decided to leave the house for a few errands, her mind spinning with strategies to stay one step ahead. She climbed into her car, shivering, and pressed the brake as she drove down the familiar hill near her neighborhood. Snow and ice coated the road, and the tires creaked. But then, horror shot through her chest. The pedals sank all the way to the floor. Her brakes had failed. The car surged downhill, unstoppable, snow spraying in violent arcs. The car slammed into the snowbank with a jarring crunch, sending a cloud of icy powder into the air. Averie's chest heaved, adrenaline surging as she struggled to catch her breath. Miraculously, she was alive, legs numb and hands shaking. She stumbled out, peering through the swirling snow, eyes scanning for any signs of the road, or the threat that had caused her brakes to fail. Somewhere in the shadows, she caught movement. A figure emerged, tall, deliberate, and familiar, the black coat. Averie froze, heart pounding. The man stepped closer, his face finally visible under the hood. "Dorian Vance," he said, voice low but unmistakable. Recognition hit her like ice. Son of one of the most influential families in town, connected to the same circles that had tried to bury Silas Hartwell. Her pulse raced with a mixture of fear and resolve. "Why are you following me?" she demanded. Dorian shook his head. "I'm not your enemy, Averie. But Silas, he left you something. Something dangerous. You need to be careful. There are people who would kill to keep it hidden." His eyes darted to the road, cautious. Averie swallowed, her mind spinning with dread and suspicion. The storm around her seemed insignificant compared to the storm she now faced, a silent war waged by the town's most powerful families. She wanted answers, but she also wanted safety. And in that moment, she realized her family might not be safe either. Later that night, as she lay in bed, heart still racing, a sinking feeling rooted in her stomach, she grabbed her phone and dialed her mother's number. Silence. Not a ring. Not a voicemail. Her chest tightened. Marlene was gone. Panic fueled Averie as she ran through the neighborhood, snow crunching beneath her boots. She spotted her mother's car abandoned near the edge of the river, its doors ajar and engine cold. The air was thick with the smell of frozen earth and wet metal. Her heart pounded, memories of the fire, the threats, and the black-coat stranger colliding in her mind. She remembered her mother's calm voice as a child, guiding her through storms, telling her to be brave even when the world seemed cruel. That same voice echoed now, urging her forward. Footprints led away from the car, delicate and purposeful, curving into the shadowed woods along the riverbank. Averie followed them, each step slipping through snow and ice, her breath fogging in the frigid night. The footprints stopped at a small clearing. She strained her eyes, scanning the darkened woods, calling for her mother. Her voice cracked, swallowed by the silence. There, half hidden beneath a blanket of snow, lay Marlene. Her body was still, limbs bent unnaturally, and her face pale as the frost covering it. Averie's stomach twisted, fear coiling like a serpent. She dropped to her knees, shaking her mother gently. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Mom, wake up. Please, wake up." A sudden shadow moved behind her, long and deliberate. Averie froze. Slowly, Dorian stepped from the darkness, black coat blending with the night. His expression was unreadable, calm, but cold. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her voice caught in her throat. Averie's hands shook as she pressed herself against her mother, shielding her from the figure looming behind them. "Stay back," she shouted, voice raw with fear and exhaustion. Dorian raised his hand slowly, showing no weapon. "I'm not your enemy," he said, voice calm but urgent. "I swear, Averie. Listen to me." Her pulse raced, distrust fighting curiosity. "Why should I believe you?" she demanded. He gestured to the woods, to the shadows where danger could be lurking unseen. "Silas left you something. Documents. Papers exposing a network that's been controlling this town for generations. Families, officials, people who think they can manipulate everyone and everything, including your life." Averie's chest tightened. She had suspected as much, piecing together threats, fire, and the black coat figure. But hearing it confirmed left a sick weight in her stomach. "He trusted you with it?" she whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Dorian's eyes softened. "He trusted you. He believed in you. That's why he risked his life, and now, yours is at risk too. There are people who will stop at nothing to keep it buried. You need to act carefully." Averie's mind spun, fear and determination tangling. A sudden crack echoed through the trees. Her head snapped toward the sound just in time to see someone behind her collapse in a spray of blood, a sniper's bullet tearing through them. Panic exploded in her chest as she realized. The fight had just begun, and the town's shadows were closing in. Averie froze, stomach twisting as she recognized the man sprawled in the snow. It was Martin Hale, Silas's assistant, the gentle man who had brought her the envelope and key, the one whose calm voice had offered reassurance during the storm. Blood spread across his coat, staining the snow a deep, unnatural red. She dropped to her knees, hands shaking violently as she pressed against his chest, willing him to breathe, willing him to stay alive. "Martin, please stay with me," she begged, tears stinging her eyes. His eyes fluttered weakly, locking on hers. I'm sorry, Averie. I tried." His voice was a whisper, barely audible over the wind whipping through the trees. He coughed once, a harsh, ragged sound, and then his body went limp. She pressed her cheek to his cold face, sobbing, grief and rage tangling in her chest. The world seemed to stop, her knees sinking deeper into the snow, every heartbeat screaming at the injustice. Averie's breath came in ragged gasps as fury replaced the helplessness threatening to consume her. She couldn't let him die in vain. She couldn't let Silas's secrets be buried, or let the people responsible escape. Every fiber of her being screamed that she had to act, that she had to fight, not just for herself, but for the people who had trusted her, who had believed in her courage. A sudden metallic twang split the night air. Averie's head snapped up. Through the scope of a distant rifle, the sniper had already reloaded, and the cold black barrel aimed directly at her. Averie's heart stopped as she saw the sniper squeeze the trigger. A flash of instinct and reflex surged. Dorian lunged, knocking her to the ground just as the bullet tore through the snow where her head had been moments before. She gasped, pressed to the cold earth, adrenaline ripping through every nerve. "Move," he shouted, dragging her behind a fallen tree. Fear and fury mingled in her chest, burning hotter than the storm around them. Together, they ran through the woods, slipping through patches of ice and snow. Every step carried terror, but also a strange, fragile bond forming between them, a recognition that they were fighting for the same truth. Dorian glanced at her, eyes shadowed by guilt and urgency. "We have to get Silas's documents," he said. Everything he left, everything he warned about, is still at the mill. The old mill rose before them, its skeletal frame looming like a ghost of the past. Averie's pulse raced, but she climbed the steps with determination, retrieving the hidden box of documents that detailed the town's secret network, the corruption, the manipulation, the generations of power buried beneath polite smiles and expensive coats. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the weight of what she now held, evidence that could free her town from silence and fear. Suddenly, the sound of crackling flames reached their ears, sharp and horrifying. Smoke billowed into the night sky. Through the windows, Averie saw fire spreading quickly through the old mill. Panic surged. Someone wanted to destroy the proof, erase everything. They were trapped, and the network wasn't finished with them yet. Smoke thickened around them, turning the mill into a furnace of heat and danger. Flames licked at the walls, sending sparks and debris into the night air. Averie's lungs burned as she grabbed Dorian's arm. "We have to go now," she shouted. Together, they smashed through a boarded-up window, shards of wood and glass cutting their hands, but neither cared. Cold night air hit them like a lifeline as they tumbled into the snow outside, coughing and shivering. The documents were safe in her backpack, soaked with sweat and fear, but intact. Once they were far enough from the inferno, Averie sank to her knees, staring at the fire consuming the mill. Tears streamed down her face. Relief, grief, anger, and an unshakable sense of purpose all at once. She had survived storms, bullets, fire, and betrayal. She had lost people she cared about, but she had also discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. With Dorian beside her, she realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. The next day, Averie handed Silas's documents to the press, each page a revelation exposing decades of hidden corruption. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, and the town erupted in whispers and outrage. For the first time, her voice mattered. For the first time, she refused to be silent, refusing to let fear dictate her life. That night, when she returned home, exhausted but resolute, a soft tap at her door caught her attention. On her porch lay a small, plain envelope, its edges worn. She picked it up, heart tightening. Inside was only one line, written in familiar, deliberate handwriting. "Your work isn't finished." Averie tore open the envelope, hands trembling. Inside was a folded letter in Silas's familiar handwriting and a deed bearing her name. Her breath caught as she read. A community center, built for the people Silas had protected and uplifted quietly for decades, now officially dedicated to her. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of trust, gratitude, and belief in her courage. Silas had given her more than property. He had entrusted her with a mission. Days later, the town gathered for the opening. Some faces were ashamed, others proud, and many simply curious. Children ran across the snow-dusted lawn, parents clutching coffee cups, elders standing quietly, whispering apologies they hadn't known how to voice before. Averie stood at the podium, heart steady, voice unwavering. She spoke of bravery, kindness, and the power of speaking truth. She recounted the sacrifices, the losses, the moments of fear, and the moments of choice. She spoke of Silas, of Martin, of those who had believed in justice long before anyone else would. When she finished, silence stretched for a heartbeat, and then applause erupted, pure and uncontainable. Averie looked out at the town, her chest swelling with pride and sorrow, knowing that this moment, this place, would honor what had been hidden for too long. As she stepped away from the podium, she realized something profound. The greatest gift Silas had given her wasn't the center, or the wealth, or even the documents. It was her own voice. Loud, fearless, and unstoppable. Her voice could break the town's silence, rewrite its history, and ensure that no one like her, or Silas, would ever be ignored again. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe, because every act of courage deserves to be heard. Share this video to remind someone that bravery and kindness can change lives, even when the odds are stacked against you. And comment below, if you were in Averie's shoes, what would you have done? Your voice matters, just like hers.